Hi there. I'm just going to do this very quick overview of what the EMA is asking you to do. There is a tutorial coming up on the 25th of April in the morning and again in the evening, but I know some of you are starting to look at the EMA already, so I thought it might help if I did this quick look at what you need to do. So first thing is, don't worry, it's just another essay. Okay, so you're building on what you've been doing this year through the first three TMA. So it's just another essay to do. So I will cover this in detail in the tutorial, but some of you have been contacting me about it already, so I just wanted to try and explain what the question's asking so that people can get a head start if they want to. Okay, so the cutoff date is the 23rd of May. Remember that there are no extensions. If you submit it late, it won't be accepted. So aim for 12 noon, just in case you have any IT problems, so that the help desk is open for you. But you do actually have until midnight, but don't submit it even a minute late. Okay. It's a 3,000 word essay again. You need to draw from material in all three parts of the module. So the early years, middle years, and adolescence. You need to choose three themes. Okay, so there's 5 of them available. Choose 3 in order to answer this question. You also need to show evidence, as with TMA3, that you've done some research and read beyond the module materials. Remember, these need to be peer-reviewed articles of proper research studies. Don't select more than 3, maybe 4. Okay, the assignments and the EMA are assessing your knowledge and understanding of what you've studied this year on the module. So don't use more than 3 or 4 external research studies, because that, if you use more than that, it will just replace what's already in the module. Okay, so you use them to add to your discussion of the modules. Make sure, I don't know why there's a black square on here, sorry. I think that's where my face is meant to be, but it's not. Make sure you start, when you start working on the EMA, that you're aware of the feedback you've had over the last 3 assignments. And if there's an issue that keeps being raised, you need to do something about that in order to improve your academic writing to obviously get a higher grade. So don't ignore feedback you've had. Work on it, continue to develop it, because you will then need to do that for your next module next year as well. It's part of your learning. So the question is asking you to critically discuss some of the significant predictors of developmental outcomes among children. I'm going to explain that in a minute. This time you've got 2 videos which are your stimulus material. One of the videos is by Siegel and the other one is by Wisner. So make sure you have a look at those. They're very easy and interesting to listen to. You've got to write a 3,000 word essay using material from part 1, early years, part 2, middle years, and part 3, adolescence, picking up 3 different themes. So watch the 2 videos, think about what this question's asking you to do, and then draw up some sort of plan to help you organize your ideas. So analyze what the question's asking you to do. It's asking you to critically discuss. So that doesn't mean just describe them. It means consider them. Are they valid? Are they important? Some of the significant predictors. So you have to identify what you think the significant predictors are in shaping development. How many should you select? Which ones do you want to talk about? Pick the ones that you think have the most influence on how children develop. So, of developmental outcomes, it means the result of their development. So, do children end up as happy 18-year-olds with a strong sense of self-esteem? Are they successful with other people? So that's the outcome. Or are they troubled people? Are they in trouble with the law? Are they unable to create long-lasting relationships, etc., etc.? And among children is also important because it means you could have, well, it means that there could be differences between children that grow up in the same environment. So you could have two children in the same family. The parents split up and get divorced. One child seems to cope fairly well with that. The other child completely falls to pieces and starts misbehaving at home, misbehaving at school, etc., etc. So what's the difference between those two children that have experienced the same change in their environment, that one of them manages to cope, even though obviously they're upset, but the other one completely goes off the rails? So the essay is asking you to critically discuss some of the significant predictors of developmental outcomes among children. So what have you read so far that's made you understand that something is really important for healthy, happy development? Is it secure attachment, for example? Okay. That might be one of the things that you decide is really important. Could it be their genetic makeup when it comes to how they manage their emotions, how they are resilient to stressful situations, is another one. Okay, so that's what the question's asking you to do. Let's have a very quick look at the two videos. So the seagull video talks about twins, and the study of twins is really important because it gives us some insight, some understanding of the genetic factors that might be influencing development. Because if you've got identical twins, they're genetically the same. If you raise them in completely different environments, you would think that they would develop very differently. But very often, twins are reunited, and it's discovered that there are a lot of very similarities between them in their behavior. And so because they've not been raised together, they've been raised in different environments, those similarities are argued to be down to their genetics. The other video is by Weisner, and Weisner argues that it's actually the environment that the child grows up in that's the most important influence. So these two talks are presenting very different views about the most important influences on development. They're not reporting specific research evidence. So you need to think about how you could relate what they're saying to your EMA discussion. So one of them is talking about how genetics is the most important factor in shaping outcome. The other is talking about the environment being the most important factor in shaping outcome. Okay, so you could weave these two approaches, these two arguments throughout your discussion. So it's not really relevant to have one paragraph explaining what Siegel says and one paragraph explaining what Weisner says, as you've had in your previous assignments, because their arguments go through the whole discussion. Okay, so you're going to relate back to them throughout your essay. Right, so I'm just trying to change slides, but my mouse isn't working. Let's try that. There we go. So the stimulus videos are talking about two key influences on development that could predict the outcome for the child. So nature and nurture, genes and environment. And we're all familiar with that sort of argument. So think about how that argument could relate to some of the module materials. So, for example, we have attachment type. And we all know from reading the module, reading the evidence, that the type of attachments you have with your caregivers shapes how you develop. All right. But remember that when we're looking at attachment, the child is also bringing their own characteristics in, which is going to influence how the parents interact with them. So it's not just a one way, oh, how well the parent cares for the child just receives it. The child shapes it too. So is that nature or nurture, or a combination of both? We've also got the risk factors and levels of resilience in the emotion chapters. So the same environment will have different outcomes for different children. Remember, there's an argument that some children are orchids and some are dandelions. Is that nature or nurture, or is it a combination of both? So think about those as key ideas for the essay, but think of other things as well. Is it possible to untangle the influences of on development of nature and environment, or do they actually interact with each other? Children aren't passive recipients of how they're parented or of the broader environment, but they're active participants in constructing what kind of parent or what kind of environment that they're exposed to later on. Sorry, I think I just missed a. Hang on a sec. I can't get my mouse onto my other screen. I think I missed a slide. No, it's not going back. Okay, so remember why you're being asked to consider 3 age ranges. Okay, the assignments are asking you to bring in material across the different age ranges. And the reason for that is because they want you to talk about how earlier experiences influence later development. Because of course, how you develop through middle years is is going to influence how you develop in adolescence, and how you develop what experiences you have in early years carries through to middle years and then to adolescence. So understanding that pathway that we go through helps us get a clearer understanding of the influences on development throughout their childhood. So because of that, when you're selecting your themes, you need to make sure you use the same ones across the different age ranges, because that allows you then to look at development as the child grows up in that area. Okay, so don't choose middle years for one theme, early years for another, and adolescent for another. You need to look at 1 or 2 age ranges for each theme. Okay. Make sure you plan your essay to manage the word count. You've got a 3,000 word essay. So remember my previous guidance in tutorials about working out how you're going to allocate that space. So you need about 10% for the introduction, 10% for the conclusion, which leaves you about 2,400 words for the actual discussion. All right, so if you're going to look at 3 themes, divide that into 3 and use the same amount of space for each theme, and within each theme bring in a couple of age ranges to show how that development area progresses and influences outcomes. Okay, so remember to plan that, because it's quite a complicated essay with lots of things to consider in it. So that's just a suggestion. and a reminder of what to include in each section of your essay. Make sure you've got your referencing correct. By this stage in your undergraduate journey, you should be showing that you know about referencing. You understand how to reference. There's a little video in the forum, in another thread, that talks through the basics of referencing, and there's also a PowerPoint. So also the feedback I've given you on assignments will correct your referencing if you haven't been presenting it correctly. So respond to that, do something about it, make sure you're referencing correctly. Okay. I've just decided I don't really like recording in PowerPoint. It's a bit clunky. Selecting outside resources. Make sure you draw up your essay plan based on the module materials first. When you do that, you might see if there are any gaps or areas where you'd like to know more in your essay plan. You can use those gaps as ways to find specific research that will fit in and that will add to what you're talking about. Don't use more than 3 or 4, and make sure you bring in what they're talking about as part of your discussion. Don't have a separate paragraph for each external source. It needs to be part of what you're discussing. So it might be an idea to think about finding an external source for each theme that you discuss. So then you'll have 3 of them. Okay. Remember about your paragraph structure. In this forum, there's way back early, there's my Learning Event 2 materials on academic writing. So if you're a bit stuck with your paragraphs, review that. Okay, have a look through that. Because if you have well-structured paragraphs, it means that you have a well-focused essay, which is addressing the question as you go through. So the question is asking you to critically discuss some of the significant predictors of developmental outcomes among children. So what psychological theories and processes might explain the link between what happens to us as young children and the outcome when we're 18? So understanding the processes that influence us and help us identify something that will predict something will happen is important, because it gives us a clearer understanding of how development works, and also because it would then lead to providing effective interventions for children whose development isn't progressing positively. So you do need to consider some of the psychological explanations about how a predictor might cause different outcomes among children. And what that means is that you need to bring in some discussion of models that explain that over time. Now, I'll go into more detail on that in the tutorial, but models help us to understand how one thing can result in a certain outcome. So sometimes it could be a straightforward, simple, linear model. So insecure attachment leads straight to a poor outcome, whereas transactional models are a more involved explanation because they're looking at interactions over time and how they build together. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that we mean about when we talk about models. So finally, writing your EMA, make sure that you look back at the feedback you've had on assignments, because if you continue to do what you do, then continue to get the same outcome. Okay, you'll only get a different outcome, i.e. a better grade, if you change what you're doing. And the idea of my feedback is to help you see how to change areas of weakness in your academic writing to make it more appropriate. So that's usually about referencing or about paragraph structure or about focusing on the question and making sure you do what you're being asked to do. Okay, so another thing to remember is that your EMA isn't marked by me. It'll be marked by another tutor, by an exam marker, and you will get your results sometime in mid-May. Later on, the date to expect them will appear on your student homepage. Okay, so basically, good luck. Remember, it's just another essay, and please come to the tutorial. I will be recording the tutorial, so if you can't get to the tutorial, I'll post the link to the recording so you can listen to me waffling on for 2 hours. Okay, guys, I hope that's helped and see you soon. Bye.